Are you in every way, woman?
We're back with Every Way Woman and Breastlink. We were talking about the transition of moving on and the caregivers to support in particular. Tell me about that, Dr. Russo.
Well, you know, when we engage with the patient initially, we really become part of their team, almost part of their family. I mean, some of our patients, and I'm sure Dr. West can attest to that, you know, we follow for years. They know about my children. I know about their family members. And so, you know, unfortunately, all stories do come to an end sometimes, and that's hard for us because they are part of our family.
How do you deal with that?
It's hard. I think there's no good way to deal with it. I think you have to use, you know, whether it's, you know, working out or activities to kind of just vent those emotions, but it's really hard. We do take it home a lot of
Well,
times.
I wonder, as a doctor, sorry, Stacey, if you ever feel responsible.
Right, or do you feel that you failed?
There's two different things. One is breast cancer can be very unpredictable, and people do recur. Sometimes it happens in cases we really wouldn't have expected, and that's tough on you. But every case we do, every patient we deal with, we look back and say, did we do everything right? And if you look back and you haven't done something right, or something's fallen from through the cracks, you do feel a sense of responsibility. And those are sleepless nights. But that's what makes you better. You have to learn from your mistakes. It's inevitable some of these mistakes will occur. Either you or your team, or a letter didn't go out, or a reminder. There's a whole chain of events that can lead to a little mistake, and then something bad happens. And so I think if you don't take this seriously, if you don't go home and have sleepless nights about it, you just don't get better. But we share our mistakes, and we're honest with our mistakes. And yesterday at our conference, one of the doctors could have done things differently, and we really, you know, changed course in Breastlink in our protocol based on that one issue.
But you know what, Dr. West, we spend a lot of time with the patient, but it's also, as you're saying, it's also the caregiver who has to come to terms with what has happened. How do you tell them, I'm sorry?
But there is a sense of responsibility that the caregiver feels, that the doctor feels, that the life partner feels. And I'm sure even in reconstruction and making a woman feel whole again, that probably has a lot to deal with the dynamic in a loving or in a sexual relationship.
Yeah, well, basically one of our primary roles as plastic surgeons is to restore their sense of femininity, like giving them that, giving them what a lot of women feel that their breasts have given them a lot of self-confidence and giving them back those.
But does their husband ever come in on that?
Their husbands are there in their consultation and their visits routinely, especially their post-operative visits. Someone has to drive them there, and you see that change in them. It affects them deeply.
What is the change?
Well, basically, the husbands come in and they're the supportive rock in the beginning usually. The wife, when she first gets diagnosed, is obviously very distraught from that, and the husband is very supportive.
You know, Dr. Wang, as you're saying that, it was a wonderful story about a survivor, and her husband said that he felt so at loss because the man is supposed to be the protector, and it moved me when he said that. The man is supposed to be the protector, and his wife was going through this, and it was the most vulnerable state he would ever be.
Because as a husband myself, you can't fully understand what your wife is going through, and you don't really know how to support the mother and to be there for them. But it's actually kind of funny if you think about it. You see a transition, though, as the wife's going through it and she gets further through the process, she gets her confidence back with each step. She's getting more confident about, she's fighting cancer. The husband, though, is seeing the recovery, and you see that they kind of trade roles. The husband actually gets more nervous during the recovery
So how
period.
do you fix that dynamic?
Sometimes it takes counseling, and we have a social worker who works with our patients.
Okay.
The other thing that's important to know is, if you have a little bit of a rocky marriage and then you get something like a breast cancer diagnosis, that marriage is in a lot of trouble. I mean, it's just like any other major stress in your life.
Why? Why would it be in trouble?
Well, if the marriage was already rocky, then it comes down to there are two ways to go. You can either stick it out or you can walk
away.
And then unfortunately, we see a lot of the latter, unfortunately.
It's too much for them to deal with?
Exactly. And usually if they're having problems, they're not communicating, and they just can't get beyond that diagnosis.
We do have a husband support group, and the men who's walked their wives through this process for a number of years come back and help the husbands of newly diagnosed patients. And basically, they are, just like Dr. Wong said, a lot of these men feel frustrated. I don't know what to do. And basically say, just listen. Just hold her hand. Just hug them.
That is
there
so
isn't
important.
an explanation for them. But knowing that you're there supporting them is
that is
really
key. That is key. We'll be back with more Every Way Woman. Stay tuned.
Are you in every way woman?